Good morning. We're going to call the Senate Finance Committee hearing to order. Members, it's Tuesday, February 16th. We have one bill before us, Senate File 3. It's my bill, actually, and needs to be done before the February forecast. Before I turn it over to Senator Ingebrigtsen, though, I'd like to just make a few comments that and thank all the people behind the scenes that are working diligently to make sure that this hybrid works. I know last week I said it was a little bit clunky. My apologies for that, because I said that because of operator error, and that was about me. But there are a lot of people that are making this work, and I really appreciate their it's challenging times, and they are making this work. And so we're going to do our first hybrid meeting with me sitting at the testifying table and Senator Ingebrigtsen chairing the committee. A few guidelines before we start. If you do attend in person, please bring your laptop. And we are socially distanced. Everybody's wearing a mask. And it's very safe down here. So if you do decide to come in, please bring your laptop. And if you are remote, I ask that you please mute your computer until you are ready to speak. And then turn off all the other devices if you can in the background, even your TV. That seems to cause some buzzing, we have noticed. And then when you are ready to speak, please raise your hand through the Zoom. We all know that function once in a while. It works and sometimes it doesn't, but I will be calling people in order of their hand, and we can tell from the participants portion, what hand is up. So when we are ready to start voting, please unmute, turn your video on, and we are going to go the old-fashioned way with a thumbs up. That seems to have worked last spring, and I'd like to continue that. And we'll take our time with our voting and make sure that we get it right. If there's any question, please don't hesitate to talk about it, but we're going to just slow down and take our time and be very diligent on this process. For amendments, Mr. Bodden will email them to you, and we will pause for review and while they are being printed for the people at the table here. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Senator Ingebrigtsen and walk up to the testifying table. So I want to make sure we have, do we have a quorum? For the record, we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Wow. What did I do? We'll get this figured out. Good morning, Senator Rosen.
Do I speak into this? Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Senator Rosen, you have Senate file number 3.
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair. It took me a while to get up to the table. Mr. Chair, Senate File 3 is the February 2021 Budget Forecast Planning Estimate and Reduction. Thank you, Charles. We love Charles and company. Senate File 3 directs MMB to reduce by 5% each year in FY22 through FY25 the general fund base administrative expense planning estimates for executive branch departments, commissions, boards, or institutions in the February 2021 forecast. Senate File 3 excludes DHS, Direct Care and Treatment, and the Department of Veterans Affairs from this administrative reduction. Mr. Chair, I have the A9 amendment before you.
Senator Rosen offers the A9 amendment. Members, I believe it's in your packets and emails as well. We'll give them a minute or two to look at that, Ms. Senator Rosen.
And while they're looking,
Why
Mr.
don't-
Chair.
if you- During that time, why don't
Thank
you
you.
describe that?
The A9, Mr. Chair, deletes the Minsky language that was incorporated in Senator Kiffmeyer's committee. So on the fiscal note, it eliminates $37.1 million from that fiscal note. Instead, we are requiring a report on the expense patterns of public higher education institutions and asking for an internal audit by the Board of Trustees from Minsky on expenditures to determine the extent of increase on administrative cost based on uniform and historical data. The board shall use the data from the Integrated Post-Secondary Education Data System, IPEDS, and this data is submitted to the National Center for Education Statistics. The amount and description of expenses are reported in the IPEDS, or the Integrated Post-Secondary Education Data System. And these descriptions are for instruction, research, public safety, academic support, student services, institutional support, and other core expenses. And we are looking for the current ratio of the institution's spending on support versus instruction and ratio over the past 10 years. If you look at paragraph 4, members, on the second page, in an analysis whether the institution's administrative operations are growing disproportionately in relation to its core academic functions, which may place upward pressures on the cost of tuition and required fees. And this report will be given to the chairs of the minority and the majority. It's due by this April 1st of 2021. And we are asking for a similar request from University of Minnesota, which is on page 2, line 13, since we cannot direct the University of Minnesota in any way because of their land grant institution or status, we are requesting that they do the same thing. And the purpose of this amendment, members, as you can see, is we want to make sure that the cost, I have great concerns over the administration quagmire or how administration has been piling on over the years in several of the institutions. And this is our way of getting after it instead of a 5% cut across the board. So I think this is a very reasonable amendment, and I'll be anxious for that information to come forward.
Okay, Senator, thank you. Members, we'll open it up for any questions. I'm going to have, this is my first as well, so I'm going to be looking at the names. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Rosen, we all appreciate the importance of spending effectively and efficiently. So, asking questions is always a great idea. So just to be sure I'm understanding the amendment that is before us, this is the first time this language has been introduced in this process?
Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Senator Kent, this is the first time. There was some discussions with Senator Tomassoni, the chair of higher ed, and he agreed to this language. It was a good compromise instead of a 5% cut to the higher institution.
And Mr.
Senator
Chair?
Kent.
Thank you. So has there been any discussion with the folks from the Minnesota State and the U? I know it's a request for the U, obviously that's a different situation, to find out how this would work, if this is feasible, if this timeline is feasible. I know we're already getting to the end of February here, and you've got an April 1st deadline, so that's like a month. That's a lot of important information to turn around in a quick time. And were they invited to testify here today?
Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Kent. No, they were not invited to testify because we just keep testimony in finance to the commissioners. This is new language. This is not data that they have to scrounge for. It is data that's already been submitted, and it is readily available. I have not had a conversation with Minsky, I will be honest. So there is time for that conversation to happen. But no, I have not had a conversation with Minsky, nor have they reached out to me, I believe.
Senator Kent, follow up.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would say, I don't know if they've had a chance to even see this amendment. So I don't know why they would have reached out to you, given the state of the bill that it was in before today. I understand, that finance only typically talks to commissioners, but when, it seems like when we have substantial new language, it would be helpful to have more than just the viewpoints of the esteemed and wise people who are on this committee commenting on it. So I do have some questions about this part of it, and am concerned that we don't have more vetting about this proposal.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Ken. Well, the language for a 5% cut on MnSCU was in our hearing back on the 28th of January, and I have not heard from MnSCU. Obviously, they were not happy about that 5% cut, but no, frankly, I did not have time to cover this information with them. I don't see why they should have problems with this language. I think it's a wonderful compromise. We're asking for data to make sure that their administrative operations are growing proportionately to their academic functions. And that's what the whole purpose of Senate File 3 is, to make sure that everybody starts looking at their expenses and seeing where they can make cuts.
And Senator Rosen, I understand that the amendment was posted last night as well, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any follow-up? Okay, Senator Benson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Rosen. If there is deep concern over MnSCU not approving this language, perhaps we just leave the 5% cut in place and move the bill forward. I know you talked to the chair of higher ed, and this is his preference, but if the committee is concerned that MnSCU doesn't want to have to do this report, the committee can pass your bill unamended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Benson. I do feel like we've gone very far on this compromise, and Senator Tomassoni is not, he does not need to see this in his committee. This is a report that I think is doable, and it will show us that, and make them determine that their administrative operations and operating expenses are proportionate to their core academic functions. That information is available. It's readily available. All they have to do is dig it up.
Members, before us, we have the A9 amendment. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Opposed,
No.
same sign. The amendment carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if I could turn your attention to the fiscal note. And the fiscal note will change, of course, because we are taking out the $37.056 million from the MnSCU. But everything else, the 74.5 in FY22, FY23, 24, and 25 remains the same. And you can go to page 5 of the fiscal note, and you can see where the breakout is for all the departments and agencies. And MMB defines the general fund administrative expense planning estimates as the estimates agencies have for compensation or other operating expenses. Operating expenses included in this reduction are leases, maintenance, printing, professional technical contracts, information technology, communications, travel, employee development, claims, supplies, equipment, indirect cost, and AG cost, Attorney General cost, excuse me, and other expenditures included as operating cost in the base budget. What's not included is constitutional officers, are not included as executive branch agencies. Also not included is MMB's debt service and MMB's non-operating and tax and credits. The executive branch did do a similar reduction for FY21 for some agencies and garnered about $18 million. MMB asked some state agencies back in this October, I believe it was, to hold back 5% for FY21 spending. And the intention was to reduce or impound appropriated spending to generate cancellations at the end of the biennium. Not sure on the base that MMB used for determining the 5% because it was primarily an executive hiring freeze. And they did not include MDH, corrections, DHS, vets, military affairs, and Met Council. We are asking MMB to establish a base that is 5% lower, and committees will receive their targets, and then agencies can work within those parameters. Or we could unilaterally cut 5% from each budget after the February forecast. This could be programs too, and FTEs, and so on. As you all know, to date, at this point, we get the February forecast a week from this Friday, but right now we're looking at a minus 882 million in FY 22-23 and 1.623 in FY 24 and 25. So members, this Senate File 3 is basically the conversation, and it is asking our agencies, our commissions, all of the above that receive state funding to look at their expenses, their administrative expenses and operating expenses to make sure that they can do better. The fabric and framework of doing business obviously has changed. And I know there's savings out there. I know leases are coming up. I know operating expenses are down, and we need to get a number on that. So this, I think, is a reasonable bill, and I ask for your support. Oh, and Mr. Chair, there are 3 letters that have been sent to you or in your packets. One from MAPE in opposition, actually 2 from MAPE in opposition, and a letter from the Commissioner Showalter, who is here to testify in opposition to Senate File 3. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. If there's no more questions, we'll move on to the testifiers. Commissioner Showalter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today. Mr. Chair, members, for the record, my name is Jim Showalter, Commissioner of Minnesota Management and Budget. As Senator Rosen indicated, I have significant concerns with Senate File 3, which would annually reduce the state agency operating budgets by 5% each year from fiscal year 22 through 25. This bill fails to constructively address the unprecedented challenges that we have today and sets up a budget forecast that's not really rooted in reality. The agency operating budgets enable the executive branch to provide critical services to Minnesotans in accordance to laws passed by the legislature. You know, this is about forecast and budget. The budget, the legislature has the rights and responsibilities to pass the budget. But the forecast is a starting point. It's a reference point, and it's hard to relate to sometimes. So I'm going to use a quick analogy. Most of us here have bought a car. When we buy the car, we expect it to provide reliable transportation. But we also know there's going to be ongoing maintenance and upkeep to keep it running. Saying that we need to cut our car budget by 5% every year doesn't change the future needs and expenses related to that vehicle. We're still going to need to get the oil changed. We're still going to need to rotate the tires. We're still going to need to change the battery periodically. And with a mandate like this, you're just assuming that you're going to cut corners and forego maintenance altogether, making that vehicle ultimately unsafe to drive and more expensive to fix down the road. Making that the core assumption in our forecast for how we're going to be delivering services, I think, is unwise. Asking for those future reductions creates that same dynamic with the assumption that state agencies are fully maintained and operations are reliable, but in reality are not. The impact of that is reductions of services to Minnesotans and reducing the state's ability to effectively respond to current challenges. Now, I think we all here are wanting to have effective, efficient services for Minnesotans. I think we all want to have budgets that are tight, that are well managed and impactful. Just to put this into context, agency operating budgets are about, and I think this is definitely on the high side, but about 10% of the overall budget. By high side, I mean this does not include some of the carve-outs of this bill. And of that amount, the other 90% is appropriated and goes out to schools and local governments and higher education institutions, payments for health and human services. And the targeting to operating budget is the part that helps figure out how to deliver the best services, how to make sure that we've got flexibility to respond to emergent needs and oversee the other 90%. Throughout our pandemic, as an example, our state employees have responded to unexpected needs, like developing state grant programs for small businesses, establishing testing and vaccination sites, and all while continuing on the core functions of state government. SF3 would haphazardly hamstring the state's ability to respond to the needs of Minnesotans as they come up. There are many impacts that this sort of simple across-the-board approach doesn't outline. So, just to be very clear, doesn't look at the impacts to communities across Minnesota, those served by the Department of Corrections, Minnesota IT services, all of the services that are provided by the Department of Human Services, the Department of Health, DEED, Military Affairs, Department of Revenue, Minnesota Management, Budget, and Public Safety. So these agencies are already taking on new roles, unsustainable roles, frankly. We're cutting corners already, and this is assuming that we're going to make that the baseline, the starting point for future years. I'll give you an example. It's hard to sometimes take these ideas and say, how do they look? Because you're right about there's some savings on the margin, but there's also increased costs. And so an example here would be in the Department of Administration. It seems like something like, the Office of State Procurement. We would just keep on making savings there. But remember, this is our state's ability to leverage better enterprise-wide pricing, meaning state agencies would pay more for goods and services rather than less. The importance of this function is especially clear this year because of the agency's response to COVID-19. Employees from the Office of Procurement helped play an essential role in procuring PPE and other medical equipment to help healthcare workers be protected and save countless lives. So as we work together to balance the budget, I ask that we keep the baseline transparent and based on current information. Vague and across-the-board cuts having unexpected consequences on program services. The specifics of what you want to cut, what you want to have changed, is the context of the budget conversation and the budget recommendations. And I encourage you to specify those specific reductions that are appropriate and align with your values rather than deliver a change in the forecast itself. We can then review and discuss those changes and the consequences of those cuts so that Minnesotans understand and have safe and effective services by our state employees. I appreciate the chance to testify and comment on this bill. Thank you, Senator Rosen and Mr. Chair.
I do have a question, Commissioner. Thank you. Senator Benson.
Thank you. And Commissioner Showalter, I do have a few questions. In my portion of the budget, there was some projected administrative growth. What was that projected growth that was built in across the board on state budgets?
Commissioner?
Just for the administrative portion.
Commissioner?
Mr. Chair, Senator Benson, I am not sure the particular that she is referring to. I assume it is something, there is a unique dynamic in Health and Human Services and DHS in particular, where there's administrative costs and the source of funding between federal funds and state funds and or the growth in the program. I'm not sure.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Benson, could you, better.
Yeah, there's a request for, I think it was 1.5% administrative growth added to the not forecasted programs, the administrative side. Is there anywhere non-forecasted programs, administrative functions that are covered by Senator Rosen's bill that the governor's budget projects built-in growth?
Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, Senator, what we're talking about is what are the budget recommendations?
Yes.
The budget recommendations do then take that starting point that's seen in the forecast and make recommendations because, in fact, right now, the forecast doesn't include any increases for administrative costs. And so the idea that labor contracts are going to be settled at a zero, that we're going to have no healthcare insurance increases, that all of the things that are being done, there's not going to be any increase in prices, is not meeting our experience or expectations. And so the governor did recommend small increases in operating funding above and beyond sort of the current level of operating costs. So that's what you're talking about. This bill actually goes the other way and says, before we even talk about what we're recommending, we're going to reduce the operating number by 5% and start from there. So you would be looking at a more significant increase, sort of changing the conversation, making it look like current services is even more of an increase.
And Mr. Chair, that was my point. The governor did recommend an increase. Senator Rosen is recommending a decrease. And so Commissioner Showalter's point that we should be specific, we got this very vague. There will be increases. That's our experience. Senator Rosen, it seems, is saying maybe we should look at some savings. And so, Mr. Chair, I do have another question for Commissioner Showalter. Let's say you bought that car and you planned a gas budget based on a 50-mile each way commute, and then you move to a telecommuting job. Don't you think you would cut your family budget accordingly? And so given that, where in the governor's budget proposals did you propose to evaluate leases because of the footprint saved for state staff telecommuting? The Blue Ribbon Commission made some significant recommendations for technology improvements that would allow us to reduce some of the cobbled together work that we've had to do on our legacy programs. Can you tell me where the projected lease savings are in the governor's budget? Because those are administrative costs.
Commissioner Showalter.
Mr. Chair, Senator Benson, great question. It would be in the State Government Committee. There is a proposal for the Department of Administration, which runs the state's leases, which manages the state space, to start looking at and get going on both of all, a space plan in the Capitol, and ultimately have some resources to try to update and refurbish for what is really going to be a significantly different environment. Part of the plans for state agencies to be able to survive is assuming that each of them is going to be trying to reduce its footprint, get lease space savings. And so when you mentioned earlier about sort of a 1% increase in funding, it would actually be more if agencies weren't trying to figure out how to economize and make those kinds of savings. So that's the balance that the governor did in his budget recommendations to try to make sure that there was savings, to try to make sure that we're being thoughtful, and that it's sustainable.
Mr. Chair.
Excuse me, Senator Benson. Senator Rosen to that point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and excuse me, Senator Benson. And to that very issue that Commissioner Showalter is talking about in the governor's budget, to review the leases, the governor is asking for $5 million.
And pardon me, Mr. Chair, Senator Rosen, he's asking
Senator
for an
Benson.
additional $5 million
Yes.
to do an evaluation for savings.
Yes,
Okay.
Senator Benson. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Senator Benson, follow up.
I have no further questions. That statement kind of pushed me back a little bit. Thank you, Senator Rosen.
And Mr. Chair, if I could,
Senator Rosen.
thank you. There has been a 5.4% in general fund spending growth between FY 2019 and FY 2020 based on November numbers, and a 6.8% increase in growth between 22 and 23. So that, we're seeing significant growth There are FTEs all over the place. Either we do it here on the base budget, or we can do it afterwards, after the February forecast comes out, and we can start pulling apart some of these programs. But we are still in a budget deficit. We certainly, I know the numbers look better for next Friday, but we are in a budget deficit. And it is fair to ask these agencies to look at doing their administrative work more efficiently and succinctly, really. And I know there's cost savings available through all this.
Commissioner, follow-up?
Mr. Chair, Senator, thank you. I agree. There is always opportunity to do things better. I think looking at what's happened in this past year, though, should cause you pause as far as how much really has currently being undertaken, even within the current budgets. I use the example of the car and cutting corners and deferring maintenance. This year has been a year of deferred maintenance as we're deploying people to do different tasks, as we're covering responsibilities and current law responsibilities that the legislature has enacted. We're doing those as fast as possible and as effectively as possible, asking people to do extraordinary things. To say that that's the norm and going to continue is kind of like asking your car, again, to defer maintenance, to ignore the fact of what is happening, that the car is being used, and it's being used extensively, and assume that that is going to still work, and it's still going to be predictable and sustainable. As a starting point, that's a bad management decision. As your chief financial officer, I would not recommend using that as your starting point. You're right, Senator Rosen. We are in a budget deficit. And so that is then the contention of, how much do we look at that as a source of savings? The sources of growth in the spending of the state haven't been in the operations. The overall growth of the state budget is overwhelmingly in other parts of the state budget. But that aside, I just want to go back to the management and the sort of difficult challenges of managing that very simple operating budget. When you talked about the $5 million recommended for state agencies and moves, it is exactly the case that you can't just pick up a couple of screwdrivers and move a state agency to a different space. The necessity of taking people's workstations, the technology that goes with it, the workspace, the documents that go with it, to do it in a secure and orderly fashion does take some time. And that's what we're already starting to get ready to do. That's what we're already working on. And that is part of the expectation, because ultimately it is long-term care and long-term savings that we're after. Thank
Senator
you.
Rosen, or I'll go to Senator Champion.
Senator Champion.
Senator Champion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure that I'm clear on something that I heard the commissioner say, because it seems as if what Senator Benson said seemed to not line up with what the commissioner was saying. Now, it's my understanding, Commissioner, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that this particular bill takes us in the wrong direction because Governor Walz is looking at the current state as to where we are and what it takes in order to continue to deliver the services to Minnesotans that they need. That means taking into account the increased responsibilities and the layered responsibilities of the current staff, where they're taking on additional responsibilities because of COVID. And I know we took some staff from one area to field more calls because we just didn't have the workforce by which to take on the increased responsibility presented by COVID. And so if that context is right, then what it sounds like is that the governor is looking at the current state of things and that there's been no growth, as what I think I heard Senator Benson saying, and therefore he's asking for increase in staff in order to meet that demand, while this bill takes that current growth and digs deeper into it by 5%, making it even more unstable, more uncertain, and prevents the state agencies from being able to deliver the services that Minnesotans need. Am I right about that, or where am I wrong, Commissioner?
Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, Senator, you're right. The contrast is pretty stark, and I think on another discussion, I would say that the forecast, the projections of current law and sort of expectations of services already starts with operating budgets starting behind other activities, because we do not inflate expenditures based upon expectations of inflation. So while human services costs and healthcare costs might be going up, while we make adjustments in the education forecast, we certainly make adjustments in the revenue side. We don't do that in the operating budget. So we're already starting from a place of kind of apples and oranges, where we're assuming that current base appropriations are adequate to continue doing the same level of services in the future.
So, Mr. Chair, it sounds like
Senator
to me,
Champion.
Commissioner, what you're saying is the operating side is not where the growth is. It's the need to provide additional services and additional outcomes for Minnesotans is what is increasing our costs, not because we are bringing on more and more staff, and from that vantage point, Minnesotans need additional services, whether it's individuals to put shot in their arms, whether it's the increased cost for PPE, whatever those additional things that we need to do in order to make sure that Minnesotans are able to weather this economic storm or health storm. That's what we're providing, and that's why we see the need for stability and predictability. Is that correct, Commissioner?
Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, Senator, yes. At the end of the day, the legislature sets up bills and enacts into law expectations for service levels, expectations for statutory responsibilities, and those are the things that are appropriated and that the executive branch then goes to try to deliver for Minnesotans. And, ultimately, where are we seeing the biggest cost growth? We're seeing it in areas other than the operations. And I think the key thing here is, at the end of the day, the operations are there to make sure that the money is well spent, to get the job done. And if we're really looking for results, you need to make sure you're managing it. You make sure you're having the operation to deliver the services, the grants, the PPE, the shots in the arms, whatever it is. You can't just assume that it's going to happen. And I think that's kind of the struggle of how to measure that, because that's a judgment call. And I think the starting point of saying where are we at currently is at a minimum a conservative number, probably a low number, but it's a starting point, which is what we're currently basing in the forecast.
Mr. Chair, if I
Senator
could,
Benson to that point, and then Senator
to this
Johnson.
point, I've now heard Senator Champion and Commissioner Showalter say this is about shots in arms. We have been given federal money. And so, Commissioner Showalter, will you please tell me the gap between the federal money requests that have gone through and are going through the LAC process for shots in arms and for PPE that need to be backfilled by the general fund? Will you tell me that gap? Because right now, both of you have represented that this bill would endanger our COVID response, and you are fundamentally misleading the public unless you can demonstrate there is a significant gap between what the feds have given us and what has been approved for action.
Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, Senator, a fair point. The funding for shots in arms, the Vaccination Direct, is, as you know, largely a federal expenditure at this point in time. What is happening, though, is the management capacity, the oversight, the organization is coming from all kinds of parts of the state government as we're trying to scramble to make sure that all parts of the COVID response are organized. So, whether it is having our results team help to figure out what's happening with the vaccine dashboard, as I mentioned about procurement, and the Office of Procurement trying to basically do their day job and also figure out this new business of delivering services. Those are the kinds of things where we're kind of doubled down on the number of roles and responsibilities in order to work through this period. And so I just want to point out that, part of the capacity of state government is about, the management ability to be flexible, the ability to get things done. So, point well taken, Senator. I think what I'm also trying to point out is that it isn't just the person delivering the shot in the arm, it's the organization of state government, making sure that we're consistently and quickly responding to the needs of the public, whatever they are.
And Mr. Chair, if I could, one more clarification from Commissioner Showalter. There have been significant transfers throughout the summer going through the LAC process where federal funds are being used to cover state agency budgets as FTEs are being transferred. Are you telling me there's a gap between what we've requested from federal funds and what is being done? Are we not allocating COVID burden to the maximum extent possible to federal funds?
Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, Senator, great question, because you're right. The LAC process is making sure we're lining up the resources to make sure that we get and use federal resources to pay for those responses. This bill says that that allocation, the savings and the level of agency operations would be reduced on an annual basis going forward. So even as we're optimizing, even as we're managing through this year, it's saying that we're going to continue to reduce that starting point and assume that kind of effort and that level of savings in future years. That's, again, it's a confusing piece because it's about the forecast and the budget. I go back to my car analogy. It's like on an annual basis and year-by-year basis, on a monthly basis this summer, we're making decisions on what we're going to do. But to take care of the car, to do maintenance, or do we skip the maintenance for now because we got a pandemic, we've got emergencies? The question is, how do you plan into the future?
Senator Rosen, before I go to that point, I would just like to cue up Mr. Nauman to come up with the figures of the amount of federal dollars that was brought to the state for the with regards to the pandemic. But Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, great thought. And thank you, Senator Benson, for bringing the conversation back to what this bill is really about. It's administrative expenses and operating expenses. And it looks like, I want to reiterate operating expenses again. They include leases, maintenance, printing, professional technical contracts, information technology, communications, travel, employee development, claims, supplies, equipment, indirect cost, and our Attorney General cost. This is our new norm, and I know there's got to be some cost savings in our new norm, what we are all dealing with and what these agencies are dealing with. And I know that I just received this information. There is 1,639 FTEs added to the governor's new budget recommendations compared to the base. 1,639 new FTEs.
Okay. Senator Johnson's been very patient. Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Commissioner Showalter, thank you for coming in today. So throughout this process, I think I understand it, and I get a little more confused again. We're talking about growth, we're talking about operations, we're talking about new programs, we're talking about FTEs and federal funds. This is getting to be, I think, as you said, a little bit confusing for even us on the committee to understand how this goes, but it's really confusing for our constituents. We've got, constituents out there on Main Street who are wondering what's going on with our state government right now and why they are bearing the burden of $1.6 billion governor proposal for increased taxes. Things like not forgiving the PPP loans, no conformity to that. And yet government fights even just a small reform piece such as this, without using a car analogy, because I think we've used that one up a little bit. How am I supposed to go back and talk to my constituents about what you're saying here, why government should not bear any of the burden of this pandemic in the same respect that my constituents have.
Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, Senator, I wouldn't make that argument at all, that I think you should go back to your district and say that state government is bearing the responsibility and the pain of fighting the pandemic, is doing everything it can to take care of services, to make sure that we're doing things that individuals can't do for themselves. And ultimately, we are making sure we're using every taxpayer dollar as effectively as possible, and we're making smart decisions. That's what I think we're all trying to do. That is ultimately the budget recommendation and the choices that we're starting to go through. The governor has put his budget recommendations on the table. This bill actually starts a little bit backstream and starts to say, what should the forecast be? What should we assume is the starting point for that discussion? So those are two different things, and I agree, it gets confusing. But federal conformity, all these things, these are changes in law that the legislature will have to decide in this budget process. This is basically saying, even before we get to that, you want MMB and the people who work on putting together the forecast to start making some assumptions about reduced costs above and beyond where we're even at right now. So far, the forecast is actually a fairly simple document, trying to do a complex thing, but it's basically saying what's current law and anticipate current levels of services going forward. There's examples where it doesn't quite live up to the expectations, where there's pieces of law that sunset items or don't fund things into the future. It gets a little confusing. But I think the idea here is to keep it simple, and starting with where we're at is about as simple as it gets.
Senator Johnson, follow-up?
No, I'm good, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Okay, I think I got the right microphone now. Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I think the line of questioning that I see as well is kind of surprising to me, the effort to justify not making any changes in the way business is done, and yet on the other hand, there has been testimony that you've had the benefits of telecommuting, savings, not as much office space needed, just a whole variety of things. And so I'm just puzzled by that. Either one is true or the other is not. I'm not quite sure which way it's going to go, but earlier when we've discussed this, the federal money was coming in and was underwriting a lot of our expenses in state government. LAC went through this a lot. And so I'm just puzzled, Commissioner, that at the one hand, it can sound like because of business changing, we have some benefits to that, but when we talk about taking those benefits in an actual budget scenario, then it seems that the argument has now turned. The other thing is that we have current federal money that has been expended. There's a new round of federal money that is coming in, large amount of federal money that is coming in. So could you just please explain, Commissioner Showalter, why we're in a situation where on one hand you talk about there's savings and changes and telecommuting spaces and things, and explain to me then how it is that those two kind of actually go together, because they don't make sense to me, Commissioner.
Commissioner?
Mr. Chair, Senator, absolutely. There's two different things going on. The first is that MMB creates a forecast, a current law, a set of the numbers of what we're expecting to bring in to the state in tax collections and other revenues, and what we're expected to spend based upon current obligations. We make some fairly simple assumptions based on statutes saying what should be done for those assumptions, and then we compare the two, and that's what you're super familiar with in November and February. There's a lot more work that goes on top of that to then say, okay, now that I've kind of oriented myself, whether it's the governor or the legislature, now that I've oriented myself with that starting point, where do I think I can do better than this? I can get savings here. I need to put money here. I have results that I want to achieve. That's the budget process. And so I think we're talking about them very closely together here, where we're putting a budget emphasis and a budget objective into that first piece, the forecast. The forecast is really a starting point. It's a planning tool, and intentionally has always been fairly simple, trying to make sure that everyone has a kind of a common understanding of where we're at. And the process of doing budgets, as you correctly state, is a lot more detailed, a lot more specific, and by necessity has to be, so that people understand what services are going to happen and whether things are going to work.
Mr. Chair. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I guess that kind of explains it now. I think I understand it. So we have a desire here to have a on top of base. And that makes sense then, that you'd have 1,639 new employees, FTEs, full-time equivalents. So this is an on top of the forecast. And what we are talking about here is 5% reduction from that. And I think that's just kind of a philosophy here. I think the world that I go to most often is my people back home who say, we see in the government that they, which a lot of places have large salaries, and I mean large amount of the budget goes to the salaries. So they say, well, they have steps. So after 1 year of full-time employment, about 2,080 hours, they get a step increase. And then if they change a lane, if they move into another area, they might get another 2%. So now they could potentially have a 6%. And then on top of that is what's called a cost of living increase, such that you might have probably anywhere from 8 to 10% increase in a person's salary over that period of time. But when I look at my Minnesota folks that are in my district, that is not their experience. Their experience is a reduction, and many times taking it out of their own retirement account just to keep their business afloat or their families afloat. And so they take a look at government and know these things and say, why? Why? Your government, we are the taxpayers, and the taxpayers out there are hurting already. So I think there's a real disconnect between where the majority, large majority of Minnesotans live and what it is like for them and what they see in government. And it's really disappointing to them. And especially because during this pandemic, so many of them have had to do their 2 jobs, do distance learning, work on childcare, and volunteer and help their neighbors. And they just don't see government as a situation where all of their hours and the work that they do, while they value them, they want equivalency. They want to see that government reflects the people. And I think that's an important consideration. A 5% reduction is actually quite modest. In the history of our state, there was a time in the early 2000s when there was a 15% reduction from base, from the prior year's base. And government managed to do things. Government managed to work. Government still got things done. And so we have a historical perspective of 15%. This is a 5%. This is modest. This is doable. And Minnesotans out there would take a look at government and understand. And by the way, with all that federal money, that's filling in an awful lot. And I'm not sure that we're really using this federal money. I'm just puzzled where this, on top of another 1,639 FTEs, and then all this federal money, there's still a disconnect. And I definitely think that a 5% is a modest proposal from Senator Rosen. So thank you, Senator Rosen, for bringing this bill forward. I think it's a very reasonable proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kiffmeyer. I don't think
Mr.
that was a question, so, but I will piggyback on that. Those people that are not going to get that increase as state employees are going to have to, and they already know, at least projected and talked about, they're going to have to pay more taxes. They're going to have to pay more taxes to cover that. So those are good points. Senator Marty.
Let me check.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, the governor is proposing some tax increases, but it's not going to hit you or most of our constituents. Their tax proposal is on high-end people, and I don't know that many people. I know plenty, but not that many who make $20,000 a week. And that's the big, nobody gets the tax increase below that. So I think you got to be honest about who is paying that, because there are a lot of people hurting from COVID. A lot of people in state government are hurting. A lot of people around the state are hurting. But when we're getting to this, I think Commissioner Showalter's response to Senator Kiffmeyer in his last statement was very much to the point. He's trying to say about how do we want our numbers to be here, because this isn't setting the budget. Senator Ingebrigtsen, you and Senator Kiffmeyer and Senator Benson, you're all the budget division chairs. You're the ones who are going to be putting together a budget. What we're asking here is the planning estimates from the department. And what we should want is the most accurate, most honest description of what happens. And our budget is in many ways designed to get the right information to us, but we already doctor it up some. We count inflation, which is very real. We count inflation for revenue. We don't count it for expenditures. That's not going to be the reality of the way things happen. And that gets to the point that when Senator Benson and Commissioner Showalter's earlier discussion, I think, was very telling. Senator Benson was complaining that the governor was proposing, I don't know what it was, a 1% increase for certain administrative expenses. And Commissioner Showalter pointed out that health care is not going down in cost. And the state has employees who they're going to be paying the insurance for. And for our corrections people, going to be paying for the health care of inmates and others. We have payroll expenses that are going up. And that's very real. And the way we've already changed the assumptions, the way we've already required MMB to provide us less than fully accurate, honest information about where we stand, doesn't allow for any of that. So if the governor wants to be realistic and say, yes, to keep the same people on payroll, cover their health insurance, to do all that is going to take more money. Probably more than 1%, but they know there's savings elsewhere, and I don't know exact numbers he's proposed on that. But he's trying to make up for the fact that there's some realities that we have to face as a state and have to do it. Now we're not going to have just the no inflation counted for our expenditures, which isn't real. Costs go up, contract costs go up, a lot of things go up, whether we count inflation in the budget or not. Now we're saying, okay, we're going to pretend our spending administrative costs are 5% less than they actually are. We're going to pretend we're going to cut them 5%, and it's not a cut. Those are just the planning estimates that we get. You folks are the budget chairs. You're the ones who are going to put together the budget. Instead of putting together, we should want the most accurate, the most fair and honest numbers from MMB. And I think that's what Commissioner Showalter is pointing out, that this bill tells them they are supposed to factor in 5% cuts as if that's the reality of what we have. And so, Senator Benson, your point earlier about the fact that the governor added in additional money wasn't to do more things there. That was simply to cover the reality of higher costs coming in. And several of the committee members that point out, well, you know, there should be savings here from leases, should be savings here from that. And that's true. There are going to be savings from this. There are going to be higher costs too. But what we should want from MMB is not something that's doctored up to say, let's pretend there's 5% less in administrative costs. Let's pretend there's no inflation. Let's pretend certain things like this. We should want the accurate numbers. We should want the accurate numbers when we put together a budget, not numbers that have been changed and to make it look more like we want it to look. And then we can say, the governor proposed an increase to cover the status quo because the status quo is more expensive because of inflation. So my problem with this bill is just that I want to have the most accurate possible economic numbers that we can work with. Because frankly, those of you in the majority are the ones who are going to set the budget in the Senate. You're going to have the ability to do it, but it strikes me as instead of having administration come in with artificial numbers, you should want the best accurate numbers that include inflation, that include the reality of what the spending is. If you think there's something that should be cut, you're going to be proposing it. But you shouldn't just expect them to play games with the numbers, because the numbers we get then don't give us a chance to make fair decisions. So I think this bill is a big step backwards. You guys are the ones who have the votes. You're going to be able to set the budget the way you want to set it. But asking the administration to come up with numbers that don't reflect reality is not helpful to any of us.
Thank you, Senator. I agree, we do want accurate numbers. Senator Pratt.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and there was a lot there. Just to talk about the tax receipt side, you know, I certainly know that when we passed a tax increase back in 2013, about a year and a half after it was implemented, we lost $1.5 billion in taxable assets that moved out of the state. And that ends up putting that tax burden back on average Minnesotans. And certainly, even the Department of Revenue's tax incidence study shows that the business taxes proposed by the governor will fall on average Minnesotans through higher prices and lower wages. But what I really want to get to, and Senator Rosen, maybe you can talk about this, but we've worked in the corporate world. And during the budget process, we're given a forecast. You're expected to cut your expenses, your administrative expenses by X amount. And that becomes the starting point. It's not an unrealistic number. It's what's expected. It's what's planned. It's not, and then, so Senator Rosen, here's my question, because we've heard a lot of hyperbole about shots in arms. So if the Department of Health were able to come back and say, Senator Rosen, we can't make this 5% cut. We have to do a 3% cut because we need this administrative staff to support making sure Minnesotans get vaccinated. Would your bill stop us from providing that additional money or reducing the amount in the final budget to the Department of Health?
Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Pratt, for teeing it up that way. That's exactly the point. We could do this exercise after the forecast. We could do this slash and burn through and get a 5% reduction in all the departments and still end up with the same $74 million in savings ongoing. But this is exactly how businesses work, and you will work hard. It makes you look at your expenses, and that's all we're asking. Look at your expenses and come to the table, just like everybody, all the other Minnesotans have come to the table in this time of crisis. Business is different. It's not it's business as usual. It's different. So I know there's some savings here, and that's what we're asking you to find. So thank you very much for that question. And I did not ask him to say that. He came up with that on his own.
Members, any more questions of either the commissioner or the author? I'm sorry, Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Senator Rosen, in regards to the people of Minnesota, we talk about reality. I think sometimes we are here and government is all around us. We are government. We're part of that legislative process. And I used to have a little sign on my door that said, remember the taxpayer, because it's so easy when you come here to kind of forget that and not have the urgency of that, right here in front of you all the time. So Senator Rosen, give us a little flavor of your district and what they tell you and some reality. We've heard about the reality of the government paycheck or the reality of governing in general. What about the reality of your district? I think their voice should be heard here today from you.
Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, thank you, Senator Kiffmeyer. That voice from my district has not changed in the last 18 years since I've ran, and they are desperate to keep their children at home. They educate them in these wonderful schools, and then they have to leave because they can't find a job. So it's all about job creation. It's all about raising good families and just being able to have a livable wage for these and to have that option for these children to be able to stay home in their area and not have to come up to the cities to make a living. So for me, the tax burdens, it's going to be tough on these people. Agriculture, of course, is huge. Everybody is tightening up. They do take care of themselves. They do, these small communities are very ingrained and committed to taking care of themselves. But I do believe I know for a fact, Senate File 3 is just a common sense approach to any budget setting in any business, whether it's government, whether it's the local mechanic down the road, whether it's a school district. You have to relook at your expenses, relook at your budget set, and make adjustments going forward. And like I said, we can do it now, or we can do it afterwards. We're still in a budget deficit, and there are still compromises, there's still sacrifices that have to be made. And we're asking for all agencies and departments to not necessarily make a sacrifice, just to really look at their balance sheet and say, okay, we can make some adjustments. That's what we're asking for.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Rosen, that may be in your final comments, but do you have final comments before?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. You've been excellent and diligent, and I think it was a really great, worthy conversation. But please, let's do not complicate this with the COVID money that's coming through. This is about, because there's over $5 million that has come straight to the state, and we have a lot more coming, it sounds like. Let's just look at, let's ask for some responsibility coming out of our agencies. And 1,639 FTEs is not responsible.
Thank you, Senator, for bringing this forward. Members, Senator Rosen moves Senate File. Excuse me.
Roll call, Mr. Chair, please.
Okay, roll call requested. Senator Rosen moves Senate File 3 as amended be recommended to pass and be placed on general orders. A roll call has been requested. Please take the roll.
Senator Rosen?
Aye.
Senator Champion?
No.
Senator Franzen?
No.
Senator Pratt?
Yes.
Senator Johnson?
Aye.
Senator Kiffmeyer?
Aye.
Senator Benson?
Aye.
Senator Ingebretson?
Aye.
Senator Kent?
No.
There being
vote
6 ayes
Madam
and,
Chair,
I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, I want to vote too.
oh, sorry, Senator Marty.
It's okay.
You weren't on my sheet, but I still want your vote.
No, I vote no.
There being 6 ayes and 4 noes.
Okay, members, 6 ayes and 4 noes, the motion does prevail. And the bill will be recommended to pass and placed on general orders. Members, there's nothing more before the committee. However, members, just to be reminded that on Thursday we're going to be talking about reinsurance, and that's it. So.
And Mr. Chair, just to be clear, we do not have a committee hearing tomorrow. We only hit, the next one is Thursday. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Very good. With that, the Senate Finance Committee stands adjourned.